Welcome to the Simply Be Found Huddle, where Dean and Rob talk about everything business related. Today we have our guest Jon on. Jon, I was on your podcast a few months back, or it's probably been 6 months ago now. I don't remember when that was, but welcome to our show. We do everything unedited and just have a really good conversation. Your background is, doing editing and writing, and obviously you have the podcast piece as well. Can you tell our viewers and our listeners about you and kind of what you do?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because I feel like 2025 is the year of pivoting because of the economy and all kinds of things. But at the heart of it, I'm an editor, I'm a writer, I'm now getting into the podcast world. So basically, I help people with their content, whether they just need someone to look through it and go and, fix all the typos and make it look clean and presentable, or they just need me to write the blog post or the ebook or the physical book for them. We do that stuff, and then again, I'm getting into the podcast space because it's a great way to meet cool people like you guys for one. So it's just a great networking thing to get into. So yeah, basically content creation. If you need help with content creation, specifically written content creation, I kind of do it all.
So,
Perfect.
so John, let's kind of talk about some of the things that are mistakes that business owners are doing. What's the biggest common mistake you find when business owners are creating their own content? Is it more the context, as far as proper grammar and all that kind of stuff, or is it more just creating something that's not AI generated, that's not original content? That's a loaded question, I know, but but where do you think,
Yeah.
because I know where a lot of business owners are going, because I can read that they're doing a lot of AI generation, but they don't seem to be making it their story. Is that what you're seeing out there?
It's funny. If you asked me that question a year ago, I would answer differently. But today, I agree with you. I see way too many posts, whether it's LinkedIn or or their blog or whatever, where it's very clearly AI generated, and they didn't even take the time to make it personal, put in a story, maybe even fact check it. I don't know, right? And so it ends up just looking like it sends this message that says, "I don't care enough about my content to take any time on it." And so as a reader, when I read that, I say, "Well, then I don't care enough to read your content." Because why would I do that? You didn't care enough to make it nice, so I don't care about reading it back, right? So that's the biggest thing I see. It just the AI generated uh, mediocrity that just turns me off as a potential customer.
I was going through and I was looking for a barber a couple days ago. Well, I guess it was yesterday. I was looking to be able to book, and I was looking at some new barbers that popped up for a website. So I looked at it and I was like, all right. And inside of the copy for services, it literally said, insert your services here. I'm going to show samples that was below. And it had all this, content that was inside of the actual what should have been content. You could tell it used AI, probably didn't have a paid version, and it had specific things that they needed to replace, and they never replaced it. And I think it's created a lot of laziness when it comes to that, and people just don't even proofread what it's putting out. They just take it like
No.
it is an end all be all, and it's going to be the best thing ever. So no reason to fact check it or even look at it, and you're going to get in trouble by doing that.
Yeah,
For
and I
one,
bet you, yeah,
AI loves to throw reviews in there that don't even exist.
yeah, and I bet you didn't go to that barbershop to get your hair cut.
No, because I'm like, if they can't pay attention to that, they're not going to pay attention to me. I mean, well,
It's definitely a reflection on your business, the way you write, the way you present yourself. I mean, that's how you get to know people when you're doing online searches anymore. That's the piece that connects. And I've kind of looked at your website stuff, and it sounds to me that's kind of your approach on things and trying to help people to write well.
Yeah, honestly, I try to lead with value in everything that I do. Now, to what degree I succeed, I don't know. I guess that's for the market to decide. But yeah, I would rather help someone out and get them down the road. And if they need my services, great. But I feel much better about being able to help them because if I go to their website and I can read a nice bit of copy, even if they didn't pay me for it, it's like, hey, the world is now a better place. I'm happy with that.
so so a question that comes to that I'm seeing as a trend right now on a lot of websites is you get the AI. So using AI for being able to generate copy is a great assistant. It's a great way to get over roadblocks. It speeds up the process, but you have to edit that copy. And what I'm starting to see is I'm seeing a lot of websites where sales pages are looking like blog posts, and there's no differential between how that copy is wrote. So as a copywriter, are you seeing that as well, or am I just seeing that as on the marketing side?
I actually have been learning a ton about writing sales pages lately because I have my own sales pages to write. And I think I fell into that trap as well for a long time of writing sales copy like a blog post. It wasn't AI because I wrote it, but I just, fell into that trap. And so lately, I've learned a couple tricks. I can share a couple tricks with you if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I love to see
So
it.
I'm working on a new course to help teach people to write a little bit better. And what I did, and I didn't invent this, I learned this from someone else, but instead of writing what I think the problems are that I'm going to solve, I went to YouTube. I found popular videos on the subject I want to write a course on, and I read the comments. And then I took notes. And then I did the same thing over on Amazon. I found a bunch of books that were written about that topic, and I read the reviews, and I found all of the emotionally charged words and phrases, and I wrote them all down. And then I made that the basis of my sales page copy. And I'm already experiencing quite a bit better response than just approaching it like a blog post, and just writing what I think people want to know. So that's just like a great tip just to throw out there is don't I was it's almost like don't even write your own sales copy. Go let your potential customers write it for you. And here's how you find them. YouTube comments, Amazon reviews, Reddit pages. Go look and see what problems people are having because they're telling you.
No, that's a good point. And I never thought about doing that about reviews or those comment sides. And my data side of my brain kicks on where I could go and I could pull that and almost get a report on that. That's kind of an interesting concept. What do you think the biggest differences are between a blog post and a sales page? Since you used to write them kind of the same, what do you see the differences are now? Because I see a ton of difference, but I think it's my sales brain that kicks on, my marketing brain. I don't write well for a big long form thing. It's not going to be grammarly correct. It's not going to be all these things. So sales copy is easy for me to be able to picture it in my head. And when I see sales copy, I look at it totally different. So I want to know your opinion on it.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm the opposite. I'm pretty good about writing long form content. I'm still learning a bunch about sales copy, so we should probably like partner together on this. I look at blog posts or ebooks or even physical books or as you're trying to like build a relationship. This is a long-term play, right? We're playing the long game here, trying to answer a question, build authority in the space, help someone along their journey. And then to me, the sales pages, I'm trying to get you to buy like right now. Whereas with a blog post or an ebook, it's like I'm trying to get you to buy, but also help you and also form a relationship with you and just have me in your head more. So I think that to me is the difference. It's just a long term versus the short term.
Yep. So Rob and I both buy into this gentleman. His name is Donald Miller, and he goes with the story brand. Are you familiar with his?
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with some of the things he says. I don't agree with everything he says. But in sales copy, I drive Rob crazy because I'm like you. I'm more of a long form writer, and I don't write well in sales copy because grammatically you're not correct. You're changing, and I don't want to get into a classroom situation, but that's the wrong pronoun for that for that topic, that kind of stuff. And that's why I struggle with that because I'm a different kind of writer than sales copy. And when I partnered up with Rob, he's taught me so much about that. And that's a unique art to be able to write sales copy and then to ask for a sale. Come to us. It's a hard thing to do.
So when you're doing your sales copy and when you're doing that whole piece, so I assigned one of our writers to go through and write some of our sales copy because we have some new tools. We haven't caught some of our copy on our website up to where it needs to be. That cobbler's kid kind of situation going on. Mm-hmm. And I was like, here, write the copy. Here's my notes. Here's everything there. And he sends it back the first time. And I'm like, no, you're writing it like a blog. It's like this. Second time, almost worse than the first time. And I'm like, I've had this whole entire big, huge poll thing. I'm like, is that a unique type of piece to be able to write that sales copy versus writing that long form? Are those just two different parts of the brain? And I'm starting to think it is, because anytime Dean's ever wrote any copy whatsoever, I'm like, no, it doesn't sell on there. And as I've kind of went through it, I've looked at how that kind of works for the whole entire sales process. Is when you're doing your website and your sales copy, your graphics have to be able to match exactly and tell the same story as your actual copy is. So you're taking them on the journey to where they can understand every single point of that sales page, because they can go through and they can just skim it, and they're able to pick up almost the same amount of information to enough to be able to buy without having to read every single line. And as I've been going through this process and look at it, how it's really intrigued me over the last week of what goes on in the copywriter's brain. That sales copy is so choppy like that. I don't think it's to where you're able to express yourself to the level that you normally would, because you use more words in there, and sales copy is more condensed. And then it has brief overviews. Those overviews, I think copywriters do fine on. It's the headlines that are there. Do you guys see it the same way? And does that make sense, or did I just ramble on and confuse the hell out of everybody?
You want me to be brutally honest, Rob? I'm going to let Jon comment.
So here's one thing I'll say. I think you're right that there's two different skills, because I have to do both of these, and it does require a different kind of switch in my brain. But there is one similarity that I do want to point out, and that's even if you're writing long form content, anything that's going to be primarily consumed or read on a screen or a device, you have to write it in a way that even if they skim the content, they still get most of the information. So that is one similarity. So
yes, I agree.
Yeah, like writing blog posts like you would write a novel is not going to work, because people aren't going to read that because it's on a screen. Like, that's the reason why, not because people are stupid or anything like that. Just, it's on a screen. It's literally harder to read. So yeah, that's one similarity. And then I think, to me, the primary difference between a blog post and like a sales copy is that sales copy should, I think hopefully you'll agree with me, should be focused on that one burning problem that keeps people up at night, and this is how you solve it. And I'm going to tell it to you 10 different ways but it's the same idea. Whereas a blog post, you're really like developing an argument or an idea.
Correct. And I think you have to make all of your copy to where it's almost sales copy, but yet the long form copy is a lot different for that reason.
Yeah.
And I think that we're seeing a big change for kind of what that's expected for. I see a lot of companies mess up on that whole entire differential between that. When I was looking at competition, different marketing agencies, and I can tell the difference in between some of that, but you have to really think about what that user experience is. Even if we look at long form copy, so if we look at blog posts, I mean, depends on what industry you're in. If you're in most industries, 78 to 85% of your visitors are going to find you from a blog post, because that's where you're going to rank organically for the long keywords and all that different stuff there. So you have to make sure your SEO is set up correctly for that reason. But most people skim your blog. They don't read your whole blog. Most people that percentage there is one of those things to where they're not reading every single word. Now, you will get the A type in certain industries where they're going to read the blog more, but really you're writing that for the search engine to be able to find you and know what you do. And as we kind of enter the world of AI where it is now, it uses that information to learn what you do. So if you don't talk about what you're doing inside of those long form content pieces, it won't know to recommend you inside of the algorithm pieces. And I think that's a big change and a big shift that's happening inside of the world of search right now. Have you guys experienced anything in that area? Or played around with that or looked at any statistics?
Oh, I think you're ahead of the game on me on that one. In fact, just quick plug, that's what we talked about on our podcast. So Content Creators Unite, go look up Robert Downey, whole episode about that very subject.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things to where there's a lot of stuff that's happening in that area and that piece. And I think that's going to change copywriters to a point to be able to kind of do it. Now, when you're going through and you're doing your copywriting and you're doing anything, are you using AI as an assistant, or are you staying completely away from it?
So here's what I found after a lot of experimentation. I use AI to help me sometimes with brainstorming if I need that help, and sometimes with organization if I need that help. But more often than not, what I'm using it for is research. And so here's what I mean by that. I don't mean, hey, ChatGPT, go search this for me and tell me the answer, and then blindly believe it. That's not what it does. Don't do that.
Yeah, that's a safe way to approach that, definitely.
I actually use Google's Notebook LM, which is
Okay.
basically an AI assisted repository. You can dump. So if I'll go out and do research, or I'll go out and have my own notes that I've taken, I'll dump that into Notebook LM, and then I'll start asking questions about my own research. And it's basically a way to make that process way more efficient. And the beauty of Notebook LM is it footnotes everything for you. So if you want to know where it found that point in your data, just click the footnote and it'll take you right to it. So now I don't have to wonder, is it a hallucination? Is it wrong? No, I can go look and see what it's pulling from. So to me, more than anything, like Notebook LM has been the biggest boon to my productivity, just from a pure research point of view. I also use it for my podcast. I stick all my podcasts in there, and then I can use it to help me write podcast descriptions or show notes or find quotes quickly. So if I want to take Rob, and highlight them on LinkedIn, I just go to my folder there and I go, hey, give me 3 quotes that Rob said that are memorable. I'll pick one, and there I've got my quote. I don't have to listen to 30 minutes of something I've already listened to like 3 times. So that's really, to me, that's way more.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to use AI, definitely, because that's what's really helped me as well. And Rob and I have talked about that, is the ability to do the searches and then the verification process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it really speeds things up. I can do it the old fashioned way, but we can do it in 10 minutes, what used to take me a couple hours to do now. And that's a great way of utilizing that tool for that as well. So that's a good point.
But what I personally don't use AI for is writing for me. And maybe that's because I'm a writer and I enjoy it. So one thing for me is I don't want to optimize something I enjoy out of my business, right? But also, like, I want that relationship with you as a reader or as a listener or whatever. Like, I want that to be authentic. I don't want to fool you into thinking that I'm me, right? That doesn't make me feel good.
No, that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. So when you're going through and you're doing your writing, what are some of the processes that you do to be able to get started? How do you what does that look like to you?
Yeah. So one thing I did recently, just for an example, since I've already got a large number of blog posts on my website, for example, is again, dump it all into Notebook LM and say, hey, where are some holes in my content? Where could I fill in some gaps? What have I not covered? And it gave me a giant list of things. So now I have a nice list of things to potentially write about. And then from there, so it's either that or just think of something, because I am creative and sometimes I just think that way, right? Oh, hey, that would make a good article. Write that down. And then from there, it's really about, how do I structure this article in a way? And so I'm primarily thinking about those skimmers, right? And scanners and people that are just like there for 10 seconds. What are my headlines going to be? What are my sections going to be? And then what is my call to action? And I kind of write backwards then from there, because I want the structure done first and I want to know where I want to take people. And once that's defined, then I can write whatever it is I want to write.
So when you're writing the blogs, I kind of looked at a couple of your blogs, and it looks like you're using the correct structure with H1, H2s, H3s, making sure that's all there. I noticed some of your blogs weren't as long as others. Are you seeing a difference in the way people, are you seeing anything on the data side, or do you pay attention to that data side? Like Rob and I really dive into that, but as far as lengths of blogs, you find some that are better because it's longer?
I've researched that probably not to the extent you guys have because I'm not a data guy, but the best of my ability to research, I can tell you that the average blog length is about 1,500 to 2,000 words, but that doesn't really mean anything, right? It's just an average. Um, the best summation I've come across is your blog posts should be as long as they need to be, but not any longer. And so for me, sometimes it's 500 words, sometimes it's 1,500. It really depends on what am I trying to say.
Right.
So I don't. I'll give you a great example. Uh, I so how do I say this in a way? Yeah, I
Say it. We're good.
We're
so the,
run at it. Just,
all right.
just
Well, I might get into
points.
I might get into trouble with this, but I'm willing to get into trouble for the sake of the example. So like, okay, the church I attend, the pastor, great guy, knows his stuff, but he says I want to preach 45 minutes every Sunday. Like, well, that's great, unless you only have 35 minutes of material, which sometimes happens. And so then you're sitting there at noon going, dude, you're going to wrap it up. Right. So like I would, but if you have 45 minutes material, then it's like, it goes right through and you're engaged the whole time. So, that's the point, right? Is like make it as long as it needs to be, whether it's 500 words or 5,000 words. Just don't, just don't try to write for a word count just because. That's my advice.
So we get all kinds of different spam messages coming across, people wanting to take over our, podcast. I'm sure you do it for your podcast as well. And saying, hey, I could do better edits for you. I could do all this stuff for YouTube and all these different pieces. And someone called me out, and it stands out when you said that. They're like, so your podcast is not the same length every single time. And I'm thinking to myself, for one, I wouldn't want to make the podcast, the same length every single time, because there's sometimes you just don't have that much to talk about. And if you don't have the relationship and you can't get any of that, rapport between each other, you call it done. And you don't want to just make it long for the long's sake. And I think there's a lot of things out there that we make longer than what they need to. Now, when it comes to content length and data side, it used to be rule of thumb, 1,500 to 2,000 words to be able to SEO something and to stack the right amount of schema around it and all the different pieces that come to that SEO structure. That has changed from what I'm seeing on the data side, right, except for pillar content. So if it's pillar content, which would be your main pages, I still think it needs to be 1,500 to 2,000 words. So if we're talking about the sales page, that's a pretty big sales page, but they want to know they're getting it. And you can usually accomplish that pretty quickly if you're stacking your FAQs and all the stuff that you should have on every single state. You should be able to hit that word count, no problem. But when it comes to a blog, I've seen blogs perform at 300 to 500 words that would have never went through and performed a year ago. And the reason being is because it was good quality content. It was not AI, 100% driven inside of there, and they were able to get value from it. So then the search engine looks at that in the algorithm state, and it looks at that content, and it goes, okay, is it good quality content? Is it written? Are people searching for this? It's analyzing all these different facts inside of that content, and it doesn't really care how long it is as long as it's good quality. Because what's happened is with all the AIs that have came out and people mass producing content is now it's just regurgitated content. So I think, and I have no proof on this, I think the algorithms look and say, is this regurgitated? Has this been published before, or is this unique? And is this real information? Now you could have that summary in there and have the rest of the content that was based on that whole piece be there, and that summary being just as good and have the same exact piece to it and also meet the 1,500, 2,000 words. But was it really needed? Probably not. But from a data side, you shouldn't just produce to produce. It's not going to help you be able to get any further than where you are. When it comes to doing YouTube content, have you played around with that much, and what do you kind of see in there, John?
I put all my podcast episodes up on YouTube, and I have some show notes that I do use AI to help me with quite a bit. But I haven't done a ton of research on it, so I'm not a great person to ask about that. but I would love to know
I
your thoughts.
wasn't sure if your writing brain was like, oh yeah, I've played around with that. I was hoping that's what you were going to say.
No,
You know what? I'm
afraid
gonna
not.
take John's side on that one a little bit because I really don't dive into the data side. I let Rob and his data team. I mean, it's all our team together, but Rob and his team really deep dive into the analytics and performance and stuff of that nature. But we're finding that we take content from like this podcast and we create content from that, and that's a great way to get original content. It may be just a little bit. It may not be quite as eloquently written sometimes, but it's original. It's from our voice. It's our interactions, and then we convert it into blogs or into social media posts, and that whole process. And then so I would kind of ask, when you're working with small businesses, are you working mostly with websites, with trying to get content for websites, or are you trying to do websites and so you're trying to put it all together? Because Rob and I we came up with this tree concept of how the root system, the website is your trunk, and then your branches are all the social media. But it takes all the listings piece of the listings engine to get all that stuff out there so you're searchable and findable. But then you have to have good structure with your website, and then your branches are your outlet points and your feedback into the tree. Do you kind of go in that? Do you kind of encompass everything as well with your businesses that you're working with on that?
Yeah. No, well, okay, preface this with, again, 2025 is the year pivoting, so who
Right.
knows? Maybe I will do that. But no, my business is really diving into the writing element because that's what I know. And if someone came to me and wanted what you just described, because I know Rob, I would say, well, go to simplybefound.com because they're the guys you want to talk to, right? That's
Perfect.
what I would do. Yeah.
So
I mean,
you're really more teaching the business owners how to write more so
Yeah,
than anything.
teaching them how to write or doing the writing for them or editing the writing that they do. And that goes anywhere from blog posts to sales emails to ebooks. I even ghost wrote my first book a couple months ago, so that was kind of a new thing for me. So yeah, anything in that realm.
How is that process? I've never written an ebook. Everybody keeps telling me. Actually, I committed on one of the podcasts to write a book before the end of this year, so I'm on the hook. So tell me the process.
where are you at with that, Dean?
What's that? I right there, man. 0. It's all up here and it's all mush. But what's the process of producing
Yeah.
an ebook?
Well, I'll tell you what I did to make it easy on myself. Maybe this will work for you too, Dean. I took a bunch of my existing blog posts and I made that the basis of my ebook. So I wasn't starting from scratch. I already had a bunch of stuff written down. So if you go to my website, cedarpressproofreading.com, you can actually buy my book. And it's all about how to teach yourself your own editing process. If you don't want to hire me because maybe your budget doesn't allow that, you can go read my ebook and set up your own proofreading editing process to make sure that whatever you're producing, has that professional appeal to it without having to pay me a lot of money to do it for you. So yeah, but basically I just I started with what I already had. I kind of figured out where it went in the flow, and it's okay. What am I missing still? And so I arranged it all. I kind of planned it out. Okay, so I already had like half of the book done before I ever started because I used what I already had.
I gotcha.
Now,
So
now I have
go
something that's very similar to that going. I've just never done anything with it. I found it a couple days ago. I was going through files and I found it, and I've got a whole ebook that's actually wrote that I never did anything with. That's about 32 chapters, and it was all based on different blogs. I mean, some of it probably have to get updated at this point, but I'm terrified. I've never taken the final step to do anything with it.
So I'm still old school. I journal, Rob. I I try to write things down, and then Rob goes, "What'd you do with that?" I don't know what the hell I did with it.
Because I mean, I fall into that same category as I think a lot of business owners do, to where I'm not really comfortable with my writing. So therefore, I'll produce content and then I'll end up not doing anything with it because it just sits there and I got a phone call, something happened, and next thing you know, I clicked off that screen and totally forgot it was even there. Then one day I find it like I did the other day, and I'm like, hey, there's that content. I think there's a lot of businesses that do that whole piece, and how do you help them get over that piece? Or is that when they come to you and hand you over all their copy and say, here, kind of do this?
Yeah, in fact, one of my long-term clients, I actually asked her one time why she hires me and continues to come back to me, and she's like, "Well, because I know when you've looked at something and I send it out, I don't have to worry. I know it's good because you looked at it." So I feel like that's a big part of my job, is to take that worry off of people's shoulders. Because if you sent me your ebook and I looked over it and I gave you some feedback or whatever it is, then you can know, okay, this is good. In fact, so I took this ebook that I had written, um, and of course, just like you, I don't know if it's good. I don't know if people will read it. I have no idea, right? But I took that step, and then I had a guy on my show the other day who's an acquisitions editor at a publishing house, and he read it and was like, "Hey, this is pretty good. This might make a good longer form book." Like, okay, well, I'll take that, right? I will definitely take that. I must be doing something right because the professional said I was. So yeah, I think that's a big part of what I do, is helping people be able to sleep at night and not worry about things.
So you kind of act as copy editor kind of thing to help
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
kind of thing.
absolutely.
So for your process of getting somebody over, if they want to do their own writing, and to get them over the hump of being terrified of even getting started, how do you help them get over that? So,
Well,
like,
it's
did you
funny,
go over
yeah.
that in your ebook at all?
That ebook doesn't go over that particular thing because it's specifically about editing and having an editing process in your business. But
Okay.
actually, right now, I'm working on a course that I'm going to release that's going to tackle that exact question. So the little sneak peek that I can give you would be a big element of that for me is to help people understand their why. Why are you doing this? Because like, just an example, so I'm an entrepreneur. I lost my job during COVID. Before that, I spent 15 years in the corporate world. My big why I wake up every morning and do what I do, is so I don't have to go back and sit in a cubicle ever again. So as hard as anything is being an entrepreneur, and it is hard, and you guys know this, I sometimes I sit to myself and I say, maybe I should just quit because this really sucks. And then I think, but then I'd have to go back to the corporate world, and then I start working again, right? Because that's my why. So, what's your why? Is it I want to write to be able to express myself better? Is it I want to write to be able to create an ebook that I can sell to generate some passive income? Is it I want to be a thought leader in my space, right? And that why, if you go back to that why and it's very clearly defined, I think that can help you get over some of those fears. And then the second thing I'll say is read the book Rejection Proof by Jia Zhang. That
What was
book
the name?
it's called Rejection Proof by Jia Zhang. Just
Okay.
search Rejection Proof, it'll show up. And that
Okay.
book has done more to help me step out in faith as opposed to fear than probably anything else.
So my biggest fear is being on video right here. Rob got the podcast going to get me in front of a camera, because I'm not scared of writing, but I don't really put my thoughts out there. I'm not willing to bare my soul in a writing process. So that's my biggest thing with trying to get out there and write. So, but Rob's helped me get past the camera piece by doing this. So I actually, you can't get me shut up sometimes. And sometimes I don't say a word and I just sit and listen. But that's what Rob's done for me. But it sounds to me like you're doing that in the writing level as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah, because it is scary to write. It is scary to put your thoughts out there. That still happens to me. I'm 5+ years into it, and I still, when I publish something, I just sent an email out this morning to my email list, and I was like, I hope something happens. I just assume nothing's going to happen because, I doubt myself just like anyone else, but I did it anyway.
so
So,
go ahead, Rob. I was just going to do a little anecdote for John about the corporate world and the cubicles. The biggest thing I miss about the corporate world and cubicles is I used to go prairie dog hunting. Everybody goes, "What are you talking about?" And I used to make a really loud. I made a rubber band gun. I made a really big bang, and then you'd watch people pop up and look around, and you shoot at them.
Nice.
That's the only thing I miss about the corporate world.
yeah, you'd probably get in a lot of trouble in today's world for that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
40 years ago, that was kind of acceptable to do that. Today, you go to corporate prison, if you will.
Heck, you might be in handcuffs and be like, he shot me. Next thing you'd be in all kinds of trouble for it. I mean, I don't make it in the corporate world because I have no filter. I mean, that's that was my whole problem and point inside of there. That's why I've always owned my own businesses, probably because I just do my own thing. But it's one of those things to where there's a lot of business owners that have a hard time getting out of their own way. There's a lot of business owners that they've never blogged before. They don't even know that they have a blog on their website or what they have, and there's a lot of those pieces. But it's a scary world. If we rewind back into 2008, and your story kind of reminded me of this, John, in a way. I had a guy show up that was going to do an article on me back in, it would have been 2008. I was doing seminars about social media. And Facebook was a big thing for businesses, and I was bringing people into the local libraries, and I was talking about, big pieces of how to use social media, how to tie it into your business, and all these different things. Well, he showed up to do this interview with me and to watch one of my seminars. And the day after, so while we were having a conversation, he goes, well, I've always wanted to learn the digital marketing side. I've always wanted to learn how SEO works. He goes, I've worked for the paper. I've wrote for the paper for years, but I've never entered the digital world. I'd absolutely love to learn all this. I said, well, I'm currently looking for a writer to come in. He goes, well, I got this job. The next day he got fired. He got laid off. And he had no idea that was going to happen. So he was like, well, I've got this big severance pay. I really don't care what I make. He goes, can you teach me? And I taught him each of those pieces of how to be able to structure a blog and go from that old school writing style of how to be able to write the blog, how to be able to get it to SEO, all those different techniques. And I mean, it's changed since then. Now we have things like Rank Math and all these different SEO tools that help with that in some aspects. But I went through and I taught him all those different spots. And he goes, this is easier than I thought. I always thought it was this big, scary world out there. And it's really not that scary and not that much different than what I was doing. It's just a different concept. And his writing styles of being that older school type writing, even in 2008, before all the AIs and all that stuff came out, it worked. We were getting really good results. Now, that company ended up not making it, and we ended up there. I had a bunch of personal stuff happen and went through a huge custody battle. All kinds of stuff happened. I got sick, all this different stuff. So that company didn't make it for those reasons, but he ended up taking that. And he now works for one of our big competitors. They're a huge marketing agency. I'm the one that sold them their blueprint. That's how I ended up making it to survive after that company closed. But he ended up going and working for them. Last I knew, he was still there. But it can be a very scary world, but it's not that different if you make it easy and you know what each of those pieces are. And that's probably something I should do some recordings on for videos and teach how to be able to structure those blogs. Because I think there's a lot of stuff and that a lot of just general writers don't see, and a lot of small business owners don't see that they could be doing that could help their blogs go to that next level.
Yeah, I agree.
But your story kind of reminded me of that. I'm not sure why. I haven't thought about that in years.
Yeah, there you go. And when you do it, just make sure that it's not super technical, right? Because that's the big problem I see is people just jump into SEO and all of a sudden you're talking about schemas and H3 headings and you're just like, I just want to write. I don't what? Like what? So, if you can break it down simply, I think you'll have a really good product there.
Well, I noticed on your site that you don't have the right schema in place, but schemas shouldn't be scary either. Schema is actually really easy to put in there.
But see, I need someone like you to tell me simply, this is what it is, and this is how you do it. I don't need a computer science major to give me a paper on it.
Well, and I've really kind of been, since I've been going through and looking at all the content writing for kind of how sales pages is, we're doing all this work for ourselves. It's one thing writing for someone who's a local business, who's a roofer, who's all that different stuff. That's a total different writing than when you're writing for a big, software company and having to take something that everybody looks as being really complicated and make it really super simple to be able to understand. That's a challenge in itself to be able to sell that off on a sales page. But when I kind of been going through all this different stuff, I've been looking at those different pieces, and a lot of people overcomplicate stuff. I was looking at some videos. They overcomplicate the hell out of this stuff, and it's not that complicated. So, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. Yeah, so out of all the writing you do, what's your favorite writing that you do?
Well, that's a great question. I had a lot of fun, I had a lot of fun doing the ghostwriting project that I did. So there's an up and coming functional medicine doctor who wanted to write basically half book, half cookbook. And so I got the project to be able to take all of his, I mainly took all of his stuff that he had written on social media and I went through all of that using Notebook LM and I crafted that into like a 20 or 30,000 word half of an ebook. That was really fun. I really enjoyed that.
But so I know a lot of business owners that put out a lot of information on the social media. What was the process of going through and collecting all that? I mean, if somebody wanted to do that for themselves, it sounds to me like it's not that hard. How'd you go through and
Yeah.
gather all that
Well,
information?
I didn't, my client actually got it for me, so I don't know how they did it. They gave
Oh,
me a
okay.
file, so they had scraped it somehow. And so I had just in a PDF, I had the whole thing.
Oh,
So I
okay. Gotcha.
don't know how they did it.
No, that makes sense. Now, one big way of speaking of how to be able to get good content, a big thing that we preach a lot is, start with a video, record a video of yourself, then use AI to be able to get grab the transcript, and then have the transcript write a blog for you and write your social media for you and all that stuff from that transcript. So that way it's coming from you and to where it's there. And a lot of business owners just publish it the way it is. Do you think that needs to be more edited as it comes out in the AI? And do you think that's a good form of being able to create it from a writer's perspective?
I think so. Well, it depends. So some people think by talking, and for those people, absolutely. I happen to think by writing, so that doesn't work for me. Um, but if you think out things by talking them through, yes, wonderful. But yeah, absolutely take those transcripts as a basis and then edit them because I guarantee you, whatever comes out, it's not going to be grammatically correct. It's going to miss words. Um, it's going to think you're saying one thing when you're saying something else. And then you're going to have to go in and add headings and break up your paragraphs and make your sentences a little bit shorter because we actually don't often we're told to write like you talk, and that makes sense in general, but when you get to the specifics, that's not exactly how it works. So you still have to edit out all the ums and ahs and likes and you knows and all that stuff. So I think that's a wonderful way to get a whole lot of content in a first draft state, but you still have to do the editing process.
So for your process when you're writing content for somebody, is that something that you have them do is record some videos or record themselves talking and that's where you get your data from? Or how do you do your research to be able to get their personality so it comes across inside of those blogs and so it comes across inside of that writing?
Yeah.
How do you kind of get that whole piece in there? I could have
Yeah,
worded that differently, but I think
that's
you got
okay.
it.
We have not used video to this point, although if someone wanted to send me a video, they certainly could. Most of the people we work with are already fairly established because again, I have to charge money for the service, so I don't maybe necessarily help out at someone just getting started.
Hey, come on! You
Which is
don't you
why
don't you don't do it for free just
I
because
don't do
you
it
have
for
a big
free.
heart. I mean,
Oh, come on, pro bono. Come
everybody
on.
wants shit for free.
I edit my wife's anything my wife needs to write, I'll edit that for free, and she gives me free graphic design work. But other than that, no.
That's called the barter system, man.
That's right.
That's not really free.
So most people already have blogs in place. And so I can just go read their blogs and get a sense for what they sound like or want to sound like. And I can just ask them. And part of what I do as well is if a client doesn't already have it, I will write for them a style guide that documents these things. So this is the voice they want to have. These are the specific terms they want to use or that are maybe different than normal, right? Or these are the industry specific terms. So that is a free thing that I just do for them, mainly because it helps me, but it also helps them. So that's where I get a lot of the information from for the style and the voice. And then as far as the content itself goes, we actually pretty much offer a done for you service. So if you tell me I'm a functional medicine doctor and I want to write an article about the brain gut axis, that's all I need. We'll go out and research it. We'll make sure that the research is appropriate and accurate and professional, and we'll just write the whole thing for you.
So when you reach a client, I know that I'm not going to talk numbers with you, but I'm assuming you don't have a set price. You actually talk and you interview to determine, so if somebody's out there looking for somebody like services of yours, you interview them, you find out what their end goal is, and then you come up with a plan for them and a price. Is that
Yeah.
typically how your industry works?
I mean, some people do that. So if you go to cedarpressproofreading.com/services, I actually have my prices listed on my
Oh,
website,
okay.
but they're baseline. So I understand. So like, for example, let's keep, my baseline editing rate right now, just for editing work, would be 3 cents a word as of today when we're filming April 30th, 2025. Maybe different tomorrow.
The legal department made you say
I love
that,
when
right?
people go, well, you had this price. I had that happen to me the other day. Like, well, you had this price. And I'm like, okay, where'd you get it at? And I'll match the price if it's something I messed up on, if it's in a blog, if it's somewhere where it went out there. And she goes, well, it was on this video. I was like, well, what's the date on the video? And I was listening to the video. I said, as of the recording this is what it was. I'm like, I can't honor that. But that was 4 years ago. A lot's changed in 4 years.
So basically, that's my rate right now. And if maybe, like, I can work with you though. Like, I can't do it for 1 cent a word. I'm sorry, I just can't do that. But if we need to give you 25% off because you only have such a budget, that's fine. Or if you want to say, well, I'll promise you this much work in the future if you can come down your rate. Like, I'm totally cool to have those conversations, but there are some baseline prices. And those are based on industry averages because it's important to me to value the work appropriately.
Right.
So do you typically set a budget of, okay, I'm going to try to get an article to be around this amount on a typical one?
Yeah,
or do you just free range it and kind of hope for it?
No, if we're doing it for a client, either they know how long they want it to be or we'll suggest. So I had a client recently who wanted a 1,000 word blog piece. So that's what we wrote him. But I had another client who just wanted blog work done and says, okay, well, we're going to make them 1,500 words long because that's, again, kind of the average length, and we'll go with that. So it's really just depends on the client themselves. But I certainly want to make sure I get that in writing ahead of time. I don't want to write a 1,500 word blog piece and then have them come back and say, oh, I only wanted 500 words. Like that's a bad
Can you reduce that down, please?
Yeah. So I always get that ahead of time in writing.
Gotcha.
I was talking to someone about writing, or I was watching someone's thing about it, I guess it was, on YouTube. And he goes, the best way to be able to work with a writer is you go, was that your best work? Never read it, never do anything. Just keep asking them over and over, was that your best work? And then we go, well, I don't know. Maybe it's not. And they go back and they keep writing. He goes, and finally get the right piece. And he goes, once they finally say it is the best work, then I would read it. And I'm like, man, what an asshole.
Don't email me, whoever you are. I don't want to work with you.
So you're not looking for that person.
No, absolutely not.
I was like, people think I'm an asshole, but that's an asshole.
That's a pretty big jerk move.
That sounds like something a professor would do.
A jerk professor, I guess. I don't know.
So if anybody's interested in being able to come work with you and all that different stuff, what's the best place to find them or find you and get all your details?
Yeah, 2 places. I've mentioned it several times. My website is cedarpressproofreading.com, and you can find what we do and how we do it and read some blog posts and see how much I charge for things. Or you can connect with me personally at linkedin.com. You just search for my name. If you're watching this video, it's right there on the screen, Jon Clemence, LinkedIn, and you can connect with me and we'll have a conversation.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. That was a good conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I learned some stuff, so thank you guys for teaching me.
Yeah, Jon, thanks for being with us.